Since the release of the new update, I managed to gather at least a dozen wasabi powers, and while many of them are very powerful on certain maps and modes, one that stood out to me was El Primo's, which in my opinion is completely broken. So if we head over to the shop and read its description, it says that it increases his travel speed when jumping, which also increases the charge speed of his super. So now quickly going over my loadout, I'll be using suplex supplement for his gadget. My first gear is going to be health, my second supercharge, and finally I decided to go with El Fuego for his star power. With all that said, I'll first play a couple of matches of solo showdown, and then I'll switch over to gem grab and finally brawl ball. So El Primo's wasabi power is basically El Primo on steroids, because everything you may have considered as being bad about him is now relevant. So let's first talk about his super, because it only takes about 2 seconds or less to unlock it if you're doing damage to a brawler, and of course you could also take damage yourself to charge it, but I wouldn't recommend this unless there is cover or you are running a meteor rush as your star power. Speaking of star power, the reason why I chose El Fuego is because the speed increase of his super makes it now more practical to use in almost any scenario, and although the fire damage that he does doesn't really help to charge his super, it can make a difference if your opponent has very low health. You can of course still use meteor rush as it helps you to run away or catch up to a brawler much faster, but this more comes down to being a preference. Now, one brawler that you'll encounter a lot and has recently pissed off many players is of course Angelo, because what better way to make him more annoying than to triple his damage. But from my experience using El Primo, this guy has become nothing more than a small nuisance. Sometimes they're not even fast enough to react, which makes defeating them even more satisfying. Anyways, now we'll be moving on to gem grab. So the same logic essentially applies to gem grab as it did to solo showdown, but honestly I found using him in this mode to be a lot more fun. Even when the enemy team has their own El Primo, it's a matter of who can deal the most damage first. Unfortunately I did die quite a number of times as I often got distracted, but my team always stepped in to finish them off. When it comes to playing Brawl Ball, especially on a map like this, I switched over to Asteroid Belt instead of Suplex Supplement, and it made a huge difference in playstyle. While I personally don't enjoy using this gadget because of how slow it is, most players choose to use it as a tool that forces opponents to separate. You may rarely hit or even defeat a brawler using this, but once again, it doesn't help to charge your super. Nevertheless, El Primo was considered one of the top brawlers to use on Brawl Ball, and this update has certainly helped him to push him to maybe the #1 spot. So overall, El Primo has one of the most powerful wasabi powers in the game, especially considering that it's labeled as only being extra hot on the rarity scale. While it may not guarantee you always getting first place on showdown or winning any other mode, it will certainly make you feel unstoppable. Anyways, have a good day.